Yeah, so I was 12 years old when I saw a PBS show about the microcomputer. And it was about two kids in San Francisco who went to high school by day, and then at night they came home and wrote software and sold it. And I remember going to my parents and being like, that's what I want to do.
Cloudscape presents the Cloudscape Podcast with Brian S. Pauls, founder and VCTO of Cloudessy, and Mark Janzen, co-founder and CEO of Planetary Talent. AI voiceover created using Mic Monster.
Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Cloudscape Podcast. And with me is my co-host, Mark Janzen with Planetary City. Mark, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Brian. The name of the business is actually Planetary Talent. Planetary
Ah,
City is where we all live.
very good. Yes. Well, why don't you, so just so the viewers know, Mark and I have known each other for over 30 years. We attended the same small Mennonite liberal arts college in North Newton, Kansas, Bethel College. I graduated a year ahead of Mark. And Mark, why don't you give us some background on how you got started in information technology?
Yeah, so I was 12 years old when I saw a PBS show about the microcomputer. And it was about two kids in San Francisco who went to high school by day, and then at night they came home and wrote software and sold it. And I remember going to my parents and being like, that's what I want to do. I know what I want to do. It's that. But we don't have a computer. And so my mom enrolled in the local community college um, class to teach basic programming because at that time they thought everyone needed to learn basic programming to be computer proficient. And we took the class together. She got the teacher's permission for me to sit at her desk and tag along. And I learned programming and I loved it. And eventually we got a computer to run the farm and I learned that. And then in college, um, pursued a business degree rather than a computer science degree. And when I went a year abroad, my roommate was running a computer store out of our dorm room, the guy I randomly got assigned to have a roommate with. So I learned all about how to build computers, how to do networks, how to do the whole hardware side of the business, something I'd never known previously. Came back to Bethel and said, well, that's what I'm going to do. So I started a business building computers and selling them to students. And it got enough publicity that I no longer had time to go to class. And I thought, well, I'm this close to finishing my college degree. I really should finish it. And so that's where I hired you, Brian, to I think the initial agreement was, can I pay you to be in the office while I go to class?
That's right.
And then by the time I graduated, there was enough work for both of us. So that business grew, and I've done several other tech, built and sold and crashed several other tech businesses since then. Um, and lived in Seattle for 8 years. I sold a startup to a company there called Avalara, and moved back to Wichita in the pandemic. And last year started several new startups, including Planetary Talent.
Very good. Yeah, my story was a little different from yours. Had some similarities though. So my dad was a junior high counselor, and when I was about, I would say, 9 years old, Apple. This would have been like 1979, 1980. So it was right when Apple decided, hey, a great way to grow our market share is to just give our stuff to all the schools in the United States, which turned out to be a brilliant marketing plan. And so what they gave to the schools were Apple II computers. And my dad brought one home because the school districts were like, we don't know what to do with these things. So what we'll do is we'll send the teachers home I think they got the computers at the end of the school year, and they said, "Well, why don't you teachers take these home and figure out what you can do with them over the summer?" So my dad brought it home. He had a green computer literacy book, which I still have, and he said, "You know, I can't really kind of figure out what this is for, but Brian, this looks like something you'd be interested in. Why don't you play around with it?" And I sat down, and the best part about that book was it had instructions for how to use the basic computer language. And whereas my mom and my dad were a little bit bemused about what this all was about, I sat down and I was like, "Oh, what? You just like tell the computer what to do and then it does it." And I think it helped that I had, fairly early in my childhood, acquired a love of science fiction. And so this was like a piece of science fiction, like coming into my house and learning to talk to this computer and program it. I just kind of really gelled with that idea. And so when we were in college and you asked me to come work for your computer business, at the time I had one of those just out of college jobs that you get to pay the bills while you try to figure out what your career is going to be. And my job was helping to build cabinets in a cabinet factory. And one of the jobs they put me on was operating this saw where I would do angle cuts on certain pieces that would then go together to form the cabinet. And I remember the day that you asked me if I wanted to come work for you full time on a potentially temporary basis. I was like, well, get me out of the cabinet factory. And on my way out the door, on my last day of work, when I was going to put in notice, you said to me, "Hey, don't cut your arm off." And I went to work, and honestly, I don't think my mind was on the job that much that day because I was about done. And I actually did cut myself. I didn't cut my arm off, but I ran my thumb up against the saw blade. And so it was bleeding, and I went to my supervisor. And of course, this was one of my first run-ins with kind of the literalism of corporate America, right? So I go in with this very minor cut. I mean, we both spent our childhood on farms, and this was the sort of thing where you would slap a Band-Aid on it and you'd go back to whatever you were doing. And I went in and I said, "Do you guys have a Band-Aid?" And he looked at that and he's like, "Oh man, I think you need to go, like, is your tetanus shot up to date?" And I was like, "Tetanus shot? Like, that's the cleanest saw blade that I've ever seen in my life. It's like, only thing it has on it is oil. I don't think I'm going to get tetanus." But he's like, "You better leave. You better go to I was working through a temp company. You better go to the temp company and tell them you need to go to the doctor." And so I went to the temp company and I didn't even tell him what had happened. I just said, "Hey, this is my last day. I'm done." And so I never went back to the factory. I don't think I ever went in and got my tetanus shot updated. I went to work for you and did that for a couple of years. And then I moved out of North Newton to the Lawrence, Kansas area and worked a series of computer jobs, eventually got a job doing internal IT with PNC Bank. And I was at that job for 7 years. But I always had this like kind of drive in me, like, hey, that was really fun when I helped Mark start his computer business. I'd like to do that. And so in around 2006, I started full time my own computer business. Actually started it part time in 2003. Quickly learned that I didn't like working a full time job and trying to build a business, so I quit and I did it full time for 10 years. In that time, I got married. We adopted a daughter, and I was at a place in my life where it didn't the life of the entrepreneur didn't work quite as well as it had when I was single. So I sold the business. And then I spent the next 9 years working for other folks. And just recently, I kind of knew I wasn't done because one of the first things I did after I sold the business was I started another business called Cloudessy, which I just kind of kept around, just in case. And so I just recently decided, honestly, I was caught in a let's say reorganization with the company. And I found myself without my corporate job, and I was like, that wasn't like my favorite thing to do anyway. What I really want to do is go back to working for myself, and so now I've taken Cloudassy full time, and part of that is putting this podcast together so that you and I can talk about what is going on in the cloud for small and mid-sized businesses, and also talk to other people in that world, and we can all learn from each other. So Mark, why don't you tell us? We both have basically fairly recent businesses that we're taking full time. Tell us what Planetary Talent does and how it's related to the cloud.
Sure. Planetary Talent came out of my experience running a global team at Avalara, where I worked after I sold my last startup, and a recognition of the fact that post-COVID, with Zoom and other tools, like knowledge workers can be anywhere on the planet, and yet many countries and locales have labor shortages, especially for knowledge workers. And so Planetary Talent's goal was, we're gonna make this easy. We're gonna make it easy for anyone to hire anyone anywhere on the globe. And that was our original goal. And thus the name Planetary. We would really emphasize this isn't about countries. Like, talent is equally distributed around the planet, but it's not equally accessible. And we want to make it equally accessible. And so that goes in every direction. We are not an outsourcing firm. We help people find the best talent for the job, wherever that person might be. And then we help them figure out how to employ that person, whatever it's going to take to do that. So that can take the form of a company in Wichita that we helped hire an accountant in Wichita. It can take the form of a company in Seattle that we helped hire a medical doctor in India to review, to transcribe medical records. It can take the form of a startup in Bangalore, India, who needs to hire a salesperson in Kansas to sell agricultural equipment. So we are trying very hard to do this. There are three founders. So is myself, the CEO. There's our COO, Jacob Schlittenhardt, whose background is as a designer and entrepreneur. And then our other co-founder, Rohit Gulay, who's in India, who I worked with for many years, who's our chief talent officer and also chief engineer.
Very good. Well, one of the kind of best kind of conceits that I love about Planetary Talent is this idea of planetary city. You are coming to us from Planetary City.
I am coming to us from Planetary City, yes.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what Planetary City is and how it fits into the whole concept?
Yeah, so Planetary Talent actually started as a sci-fi narrative fiction game company. Jacob and I were working on this idea of using large language models to build a story in real time as you're working out. So imagine yourself starring in a Star Trek episode while you're working out, and the episode is aware of your heartbeat and what's going on and where you are, and it's incorporating all of that into the story in real time. And so we got really good at using large language models to generate fiction and to do stories. And we got very interested in how do you tell stories that way? So when we went to hire our first engineer, we realized, we had this epiphany that hiring is a storytelling problem. And the way that it's traditionally done, pretty much everyone in the process hates it. Like, the people trying to get a job hate the process. The people trying to hire find it tedious. The HR people find it tedious. Nobody's enjoying themselves. And nobody thinks of it as a storytelling problem, but it really is. It's like, how do I tell you my life story and why I'm the perfect person to work there? And you tell me why this business and its culture, why I'd want to work there. And so we're trying to really solve this as a storytelling problem. So Planetary Talent has a lot of the sci-fi fictional elements of the game in the recruiting business. And so all talent has an office in Planetary City somewhere, which is a fictional city And we have the sci-fi lore and everything we're doing, and we have the aspiration one day to help with staffing on Mars or the moon or somewhere else. Um, so many of our competitors are boring, and so
Stodgy.
stodgy. Yes, yes. In fact, there's one company we were researching in Asia where it appears they only use prison photos for the talent.
Oh, no smiles.
No smiles, no. And
Well,
so we actually generate a headshot for each person of their sci-fi character version of themselves, who is actually the person who's taking the job. And that's where we're going with the storytelling, which is we're helping people build a profile page, which is like the best sci-fi version of them that someone would want to hire. It's still factually accurate, but it allows people to step out of themselves a little bit and say a little bit more, who do I aspire to be?
sure. Well, and as a science fiction fan and part-time science fiction writer, I approve. And I feel like your background and your whole idea of Planetary City fits into what I love about the time period we're living through now, which is I think that for kids like you and I who grew up when we did, we're living in many ways in the future that we imagined. Not in all ways, but if you go down and make a list of the things that were in the science fiction stories that we read or saw on TV, a tremendous amount of it is just part of our daily life now.
Yes.
So, and
Yes,
that's
right.
it's
I have my communicator and
yep,
my tricorder right here.
yeah, and it's part of about what I love about being in this business. And in fact, one it was one of the things that drove me to decide to take Cloudessy full time is while I was still working in the tech field, I had gotten into a very like sort of bureaucratic job. It was I was a customer success manager, and it was basically like do these reports, fill out these forms, basically a paperwork job and talking to customers. But I had gotten my hands off of the technology, and especially the part when you get to like work with some of the newest technology because it's what your customers are putting into place. And I realized I love that and I miss that. So what I am doing with Cloudessy is I worked for a couple of managed services companies. That was so my old company, Paraspera Consulting, was a managed services company. I sold it to a managed services company. I worked for them, and then I worked for another managed services company. And one of the roles that I held during that period was that of a virtual chief technology officer, or a VCTO, which is a role designed for small to mid-sized businesses, not super small. You probably have to have maybe $5 million in revenue before you're at the point where you really need someone in a CTO role. And even then, you're probably not in a position to pay somebody to do that full time. And so there's a nice niche in there for folks with my background and experience to be a virtual CTO, not for a single business, but for a number of businesses. And I realized that was also key to my own job satisfaction, was to be able to work directly with multiple, like, not a huge number, but multiple businesses where I'm working directly with the owners, the entrepreneurs, other decision makers. I'm helping them along the path that they need to follow in order to grow their business. And there will probably come a time, if they grow enough, when they don't need a virtual CTO anymore. But that is the time when in between the small business who doesn't need a CTO and the big business who can hire one full time, that's where I can make the greatest impact. And so a big part of the attraction of all of that is I, on a daily basis, can help this future that I imagined as a kid come into being. And so I really resonate with what you're doing, because I feel like you probably have a lot of people you're trying to place that are driven by the same passion, which is we can help make this world a better place by bringing into being the sorts of helpful technologies that we imagine, that we read about, that we watch shows and movies about. And, that's important because a job isn't just the money that you make, it's also feeling that you are doing something that, you can do better than other people to help make the world a better place.
Yeah. I recently heard the definition talent is what is effortless for you, but hard for others.
Yeah, no,
And it might be
that's great.
it might be effortless for you because of 10,000 hours of practice, and it might be effortless for you because you were just born that way.
Yep,
But either way, what you're talented at, you make it look easy, and it's very hard for others.
right.
And the paper I read, the person was advocating don't follow your passions, follow your talent career
Mm,
wise.
yeah,
Follow your passions in your private life. But they pointed out, like, if Bill Gates followed his passions, he'd be a bridge player.
yeah. Well, Steve Martin wrote a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You, which was the lessons that he learned in his career coming up as a comedian that he has extrapolated to basically any role. And his advice is the same. His advice is don't follow your passion, do something that, do what you're really good at, because you can be
Yes.
passionate at something and not great at it. But he also makes the point that people don't hire others just because they're passionate about something. If that was the case, then anybody who's super into like Star Wars or anime would be making $1 million. People hire other people who are good at what they do. And so his advice was whatever it is that you choose to do, make sure that you are so good at it that people can't ignore you. And I think that aligns with what you just said about do what you're talented at. Don't don't disparage it because it's easy for you. That just is kind of pointing you in the right direction.
Right. And we see that like hiring hasn't changed in 100 years in the sense that like it's still about a business goes to the town hall and nails up a piece of paper on the town board that says I need an accountant. And then
Yep.
people come by and see that and they take their resume down there and drop it off and you read it and then maybe they interview you and give you a job. Like it essentially hasn't changed from that.
Right.
And yet we now have a global network connecting everyone. There are at least 500 million knowledge workers who can do their job remotely on the planet. And that means there's also 500 million jobs. But the process of matching the person to the job is still that 100-year-old system and it's way out of date. It is not hard with a database to match 500 million records to 500 million records. And we think that a future world, we can put each person in the optimal job, like not just a job that pays them, but a job which where their talent truly shines and they love the job, they love what they're doing, and the company is a great fit for them. So
Yeah.
we think that's a solvable problem. Um, and to bring this all full circle, Brian, like those Apple IIs that you and I both started on, I also Apple actually gave one Apple II to every school in America, which was kind of
Oh,
brilliant marketing. Just
okay.
one. If you want a second one, you have to pay full price.
Ah, okay.
But you're going to get a second one, which looks like the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my rural school, very, very small rural school, I had 9 people in my class. We got an Apple II. And because I'd taken this class with my mom, I was the only person in the school that knew what to do with it. And so I got lots and lots of screen time on this thing. And so, Apple created in both of us this like love for the technology at an impressionable age.
Yeah.
Um, and at that time, it was about getting access to the machines. Then when you started your last business, it was about how do we hook all the machines together,
Right.
right? Enabling Wi-Fi, internet access, networking.
Yep.
And I
Get them
would say
talking.
now, like what you're doing with Cloudessy and what we're seeing is a lot of companies don't have IT people anymore that run cables and plug in equipment and fix Wi-Fi. Like that's kind of a solved problem.
Right.
The hard problems now are like, how do I make QuickBooks talk to Stripe?
Yep.
How do I build these integrations? And so I think you're working on that next level of connection. And what we see is the same thing on the people side, which is we think in the near future, every business, no matter how small, is going to be a global business and have global employees. So how do I solve that problem of like the perfect person to do this job is in Bangladesh, but I can't find them?
Right. Right. Well, and that's a good point. So, both of our businesses are have elements of working with the cloud. Yours because you couldn't do what you're doing by bringing
Right.
talent together from all over the world without the cloud, and mine because as somebody who wants to be a CTO for small and mid-sized businesses, my advice is you need a cloud strategy. Sticking your head in the hole and just wanting to stay in the early 2000s isn't going to work. And so the question is, what does that strategy look like for you? What elements of the cloud do you need to embrace? So my question is, what is going on right now in the cloud for small and mid-sized businesses that has you the most excited?
Oh, the most excited. Um, I think it's the accessibility of an extreme amount of computing and human talent, right? Never before in human history could a teenager like log on to AWS and in an afternoon build the world's largest supercomputer.
Yep.
Like that's crazy that that's feasible. And we think that you'll also be able to say, oh, hey, I'm just going to build a little global team here of 10 people in 6 countries, and we're going to get to work tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really exciting that that's possible. And I think a lot of businesses haven't yet had the imagination to realize what's possible.
Right.
Uh, um, and maybe it's the sci-fi nerds like us who are like, oh, we can build Star Trek now.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the direction that I come from because when I was in middle school or junior high as we called it, most of the science fiction books that were in either our small town library or the junior high library, they were books that had been there for, 20, 30 years. So they were books from like the 50s. And so that was a lot of golden age science fiction, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke. And a big part of those stories was robots and artificial intelligence interacting with machines that have been built to mimic what people do. In fact, one of the books I remember reading that was kind of a classic. I think it was a Lester Del Rey book. It was called The Runaway Robot. It was about a robot who's friends with a boy, and they get separated, and the robot misses the boy, and the robot runs away to find the boy. And the adventure is the robot trying to find his boy. And and now what fascinates me is we are right now at this cusp of a form of artificial intelligence. And I always caution people, you have to be careful of the hype train. And I like the fact that you refer to it as LLMs because that's a more accurate description, I think, than artificial intelligence. But the point is that what it is able to do is still, in a lot of respects, create these interactive machines that I remember reading about when I was a teenager. And so, what excites me most right now is these technologies that are all coming together that allow a small business person to create like a virtual persona that can help them in their business. I remember you and I joked a while back, a few years ago, about, hey, pretty soon we're going to reach the point where we've got like we have like robocallers that are sophisticated enough to call auto attendants that are sophisticated enough that they just have a sales conversation between the machines with no humans involved. And I think, for better or for worse, we're at that point. And I was just this week and this past week, I was doing some research, and there are now tools on the market. I haven't figured out exactly how well they work, but they will do like they'll take inbound sales calls on your behalf. And if you are an agency that deals with products that have renewals, they'll make outbound calls to your customers to have a conversation with them about renewing, say, their insurance policy. And and that's just on like the audio side. On the video side, there are now tools, and one of them is a tool called HeyGen that I've used, where you can create an avatar, a digital video avatar that is nearly indistinguishable from a human being. And in fact, you can, what I say is deep fake yourself. You can create a digital avatar of yourself and use that to create video presentations. And so if you're someone who is not great at public speaking, but you would like to be able to put out videos of you doing presentations, you can use this technology. Or in my case, I have a video background, and so I tend to be a perfectionist, and I will like redo a 30-second video take like a dozen times because I hesitated or dropped an or something like that. The nice thing is if I just have a quick and easy video that I want to make with this avatar, I can just give it a script and it'll read it perfectly, generally speaking, the first time. And to be fair to my customers, what I typically do is I'll title that as, you know, hey, digital avatar, so that they know what they're getting. But I don't have to spend an hour creating a 30-second video just because I can't leave well enough alone. So the fact that these things are possible, whereas like 5 years ago they weren't, that is fascinating to me. And so that's the thing that right now I'm most interested in terms of what's going on in the cloud and the abilities that it gives small businesses for their marketing in particular.
Brian, how soon do you think it'll be that I can hire an avatar to watch YouTube for me so I can have those hours back?
Well, Google has already released a version of Gemini that will process the videos that you've saved to your hard drive and give you a summary of them. Now, this puts me in mind of something that Robert Heinlein once said after he wrote his juvenile novel Red Planet. And a fan came up to him at a convention and said, "Hey, I took a speed reading course and it was so great. I read Red Planet in an hour." And he went home to his wife and he said, "I didn't spend 6 months writing that book so someone could read it in an hour." So I think that you can take it too far. If you enjoy watching YouTube videos, you may want to continue to do that as a pastime. But if it's a matter of it's something you would give an assistant and say, "Hey, watch these boring videos and summarize it in a paragraph so that I don't have to watch the boring videos." That's kind of a crappy job, honestly, being the person that has to sit there and watch the boss's boring videos and then write a summary of it. That's something to my mind, it's perfect to give it to a machine, because really what you want to do is to distill the information down so that you have the learning, but you don't have to spend, say, 4 hours getting to it.
I think the machines are very much like this is my frame of reference probably, but very much like the computer on Star Trek. We've gotten to the level of we can say, turn the lights off, tell me about that thing over there that's just beyond visual range. But you notice on Star Trek, they never said, "Computer, what should we do?"
Right, right.
Like the computer had no answer to that question.
The computer can't take command of the ship.
Right. It can only tell you about the world, synthesize data, and carry out tasks. And I feel like that's right where we are with large language models and AI right now, which is you can give it tasks, it can do things, but it doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or especially why.
Well, one of the science fiction authors that I follow on LinkedIn is David Brin, and he recently pointed out in a post that the hallucinations of large language models seem very similar to the sort of kind of delusions that someone with a mental illness that has taken their executive function away experiences. And his suggestion, and this was news to me because I didn't realize that reasoning systems are an entirely separate form of artificial intelligence that is actually much older than LLMs. So the IBM Watson series was an artificial reasoning system. So his suggestion is we probably need to bring that back and add artificial reasoning on top of large language models, and you're going to get a better result than just like trying to like force things through large language models and making them more and more sophisticated. So I think that there is a lot more to do in this area, and I'm really excited about where it could go.
Great.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for this participating in this like introductory episode of the podcast. On future episodes, we are going to be bringing on guests that have experience in the industry so that we can learn about specific areas more in depth. But I really appreciate your participation in this, and I look forward to both of us learning more about what's going on in the cloud from people who have a deeper level of knowledge than the two of us might have with our kind of general overview.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for watching or listening to the Cloudscape Podcast with Brian S. Pauls and Mark Janzen. If you'd like to know more about Cloudessy or Planetary Talent, please check out their websites at www.cloudessy.com and www.planetarytalent.com.